Alors bonjour.
Good morning. It's always difficult to be the starting speaker, but it's less difficult than being the speaker following right after lunch.
Bouton. Non, y a-t-il une manette?
So who does the clicking? First of all, let me give you an overview of our organization. So this is item 1. We'll explain who we are, and that'll give you a sense of what we do. Then I'll briefly speak to our integrated practices at BIM-PCI. Of course, you're familiar with what BIM is. And then I'll speak to our BIM development plans for BIM, where the SQI is also involved. That is the Quebec Real Estate Corporation. So, a real estate expert, how we were able to develop the SQI, that was brought about through bringing together three main organizations, the Quebec Real Estate Corporation, Infrastructure Quebec, and the Quebec Housing Corporation. The government of Quebec wanted to pool all of its know-how in project management and in real estate. So what we do is that we are project managers and we are the lessors. That is, we house the ministries. And this group is there to create more know-how, expertise, and to provide an orientation that will be homogeneous vis-à-vis entrepreneurs who for a long time have been wanting to deal with a single organization. During the two previous periods, around 2013, we had two four-year periods where our portfolio doubled when it came to Quebec infrastructure investments from 4.7 billion to almost 9 billion. So what do we do? As I mentioned earlier, we house various ministries and organizations. We own a number of buildings, about 300 buildings across Quebec. We also own the justice, the courthouse. We own detention centers and so on and so forth. We don't, however, own the healthcare establishments. And under management and leasing, we have about 1,100 buildings. We have a 6 billion order book, 5.7 billion also that are under management. There are some 78 major projects underway. The points you're seeing here is the location of these projects and their size across the province of Quebec. We're working on the new NCH Center in Quebec City. That's 2.1 billion. We're also involved in a number of different projects across the province of Quebec. We're also in association, that is Treasury Board, asks us to become involved in projects of which we're not the managers. We're involved, for instance, in a number of projects in Montreal, such as the Science Center. We're also redoing the Royal Vic, the HEC Montreal. We're also involved under Turco Interchange and the Caisse de Dépôt. That's a total of approximately 23 billion in projects. Our influence is quite major in a number of projects of the government of Quebec. It partially or totally subsidizes these projects. So what do we do? On the inside, we have internal experts who are specialized in certain areas, in project management and real estate management. We have experts in contract and estimating and so on and so forth. As a result, we're able to become involved in all of the steps of a given project, in programming as well. Treasury Board asks us to do systematic risk evaluation. And when it comes to government projects, it's always quite difficult to change the culture. So we're also asked to put in place checks regarding any extras. And of course, these are the spin-offs from the Charbonneau Commission, the repercussions. As well, People tend to think that we tend to go over budget with government projects, but here is a graph that demonstrates that this is not a huge amount of savings when you're talking about almost $5 or $6 billion of projects under management. But this is about, in total, we tend to end at 5% less compared to the budget that we have been set for a project. In terms of integrated BIM-PCI practices, I thought I'd skip this because we're at Kanban, everybody's familiar with this. But if I were to tell you that BIM 5D, how many of you are familiar with these? Well, it's about half of the people in the room. That is, the other half, either you're shy to raise your hand or you don't know. But it seems to me that you don't know what this is. So integrated practices, there are three closely linked prongs. That's work organization, the processes, that is lean PCI, and technology. That is what BIM is. In our mind, at the SQI is a whole. And I never say that it's almost a total, but I never use BIM alone. I always link it with PCI. I always say BIM-PCI, simply because PCI is an approach that is a collaborative approach and which applies from the beginning of programming. And this is an integrated design process. That is what PCI is. And that enables us to find the best solutions. And within this framework, the human aspect is extremely important. There's also the aspect of working together, of collaboration, because without that, in a team, even an extended team, which of course includes professionals, which includes clients, and in our case, we also have a client, let's say, a healthcare institution, and which also involves a contractor. So collaboration is key. If we don't have that, how can we add BIM on top of something that really is only technology with certain wires, with bits, with programming? Without collaboration, what happens? All we're doing is making things even more complicated. So collaboration is absolutely vital for us. And at every step, at startup, at the integrated design step, but as well, our challenge consists in bringing this collaboration into carrying out the project. Because I was told that when I gave presentations to contractors, people told me, look, Mr. Paquin, you're talking about more collaboration, and we certainly hope that this collaboration will continue when you're working with contractors, because often we hear that contractors are simply told you do as you're told. So collaboration is important. So to that aim, we've developed training. We have cohorts that ensure that people involved in the projects will receive training to be able to work in high-performance collaborative teams. What does that mean? Simply, we're trying to develop a method that enables us to achieve a consensus-based approach, enabling us to find a best solution. It doesn't mean that everybody is always in agreement, but it means that most of the members of a given team agree in order to move forward with a solution. And so what is BIM? It's a digital platform, but it is a sharing digital platform that is sharing with all professionals of different categories, but it also, for example, we work on buildings, and when you do that, you have a long-term vision, because we're going to be able to achieve certain savings when we operate the building, and the life cycle, service life, enabled with something that's long-term. And Trevor's report often asks us to look at our projects over the entire service life, not of the project, but of the building. So for us, it's very important to introduce the BIM into this, because as a result, we're able to give more value to operation. And perhaps you know what the building information modeling means. So BIM, and I always say BIM because people catch on more quickly. what it means, and something you can very quickly find on the internet. So you have a number of countries here, and of course, Hydro-Quebec's not a country. Back in 2004, Hydro-Quebec began incorporating BIM, but that's not the end date. And we do have an end date here for all of the countries, but that's where they compelled suppliers and professionals to do plans and specs on the basis of BIM. I won't read all of this, but you will have access to the text of my presentation so that you'll be able to use it as for reference. So I'd like to draw your attention to the UK. And here it's about a cost reduction, some 33%, if I'm reading this correctly. As well, they're talking about the reduction of the total time of the project by 50%. That includes approval. And these figures are not post-project measurements. These are targets. They were targets that, for instance, were set here in the UK. They use integrated lean practices, the PCI and the BIM. And these are targets that is when you have these kinds of targets set in a country, of course, they're committing to this publicly. It means that there's something to it. You might not achieve 33% cost savings, but perhaps you can reach 10%. That's already amazing. So since April 2013, the UK has to absolutely use level 2 BIM in all public projects. It's mandatory. And level 2 means that it's a collaborative effort. Everybody's involved. And there are other countries, I'm just adding some on here, there are other countries that are also joining. This compilation was done with our friend Daniel Ford because we worked very closely together with the higher technical school, the École de Technique Supérieure. And Daniel will give me a bit of help. That's a little bit of advertising for you. We've produced a business case and an opportunity case where we involved the ETS school. We did this benchmarking together, but I also asked Daniel to identify savings. We're talking about a 3 to 10% cost reduction target. We're speaking about reducing the length of the projects by 7 to 19%. Again, these are not targets, these are measures. It's a little bit more telling because, as I was saying, and I'm going to come back to this a little bit later on, our approach is very, very structured, and this has led to approval, and this has in fact led to our coming out as to the use of BIM on a corporate level. So let me continue. As well, any reworks, 50 to 95% on-site, that's major. As well, increased productivity between 6 and 28%. Productivity in Quebec in the building industry. Let's stop kidding ourselves. In Canada, the United States, and Quebec, everywhere else, productivity has doubled. In here, however, it's dropped in the construction industry, and we need to work on that. It just can't be that we're so much worse than all of the other industry sectors. That's just not possible. As well as interface conflict reduction, reduction of information requests. And what is that? And that's 90%. Often you have a lot of requests for information throughout a project, but what that means is that there are extras because somebody has not agreed. Something hasn't been clarified. We get to the end, and we've carried out a job in collaboration harmoniously, but as well there won't be any further requests. In terms of operation, and again, we've taken into account some concerns by users. These are the people who will be using the structures for the 20 to 40 next years. So if we take their concerns into account at the beginning, we can identify it and we can track it through the whole design stage. If we do that, then we're able to develop something better at delivery time. And also that comes from the ETS study. So how much time do I have left now? And it's the countdown. It's a little bit like the space shuttle. I've got a few seconds left, a few minutes rather. The requirements. And let's take stock of BIM-PCI at the SQI. Back in 2009, and we had started with this, we put in place clauses that force professionals to use BIM, but these were very brief clauses, 2-3 paragraphs, simply asking them if they wanted to use BIM. We did the same thing. We did that for PCI. We did the same thing for BIM. We launched BIM projects because we can't claim that we invented the wheel when it came to BIM. We didn't invent it. It existed before we were there, but we did use certain methods, certain components of this in some projects. And it wasn't structured at the time. Well, this casual way of using it was asking people whether you wanted to do it, so they did in any just way, either with goodwill or not so goodwill with people, with very few benefits that couldn't be measured and very fluctuating results. So it's very far from the results that I just mentioned a few moments ago. As a result, we said, well, we need to adopt a more structured approach. This structured approach began in about 2014. However, from 2014 to last year, we did undertake a number of projects, and you'll see them listed here. In terms of the structured approach, well, what we did was, as we do for infrastructure projects, the government of Quebec always puts in place a structured approach. In any major infrastructure business, you have the business case, and then you present the arguments, the information, and you go ahead with the project. We use the same structured approach to get a buy-in from the senior officials, because here, when it came to BIM, it was the SQI becoming involved. It isn't Yves Paquin, it isn't I, in order to ensure that this corporate structured deployment is sustainable. We said that we need to make sure that we have buy-in from senior officials as well. Other organizations, and by the way, I'm in touch with them right now, who want to adopt a similar approach so that their senior officials get involved. It's not simply because somebody likes it and everybody's all cranked up. Once we leave a meeting, we say, great, we need to use BIM. And we leave off and we get excited about it. It has to come from the top people to make sure that this remains sustainable. That's what we've done. We began developing an opportunity file. We received approval in March 2015, and we were told, fine, put together a business case. We did that. It was approved in May 2016. So since May 2016, I have been on the road with the approval of the authority saying that at SQI we are deploying this corporate-wide. But we didn't do this alone, because had we done this all alone, we would have been out in left field. And when you want to bring people on board into an adventure, everybody has to leave at the same time. So we used the ETS multi-sectoral table grid, and there is a committee that is responsible for all of the players, the entrepreneurs, the architects, the construction professionals, the ministries, government organizations, and so on and so forth, as well as teaching institutions, CEGEPs, universities. Truly, we had brought together all of the community, and we had an exchange. As well, we had one-to-one exchanges to further apply our business case and opportunity case. So we did at-large surveys with the industry. We also did targeted surveys. And at the end of the day, we were able to take stock of the industry in Quebec. It is a sample, like they say during the election, with a certain level of reliability. So the buy-in rate in Quebec was not very high. It's only at 38% when it comes to BIM, according to our assessment, and PCI buy-in is at 33%. People here in the room, well, we know about this. Perhaps 50% here at least raised their hand, so we know about this, but across the industry it's only 38%, but at least we're above the average here in this room.
Why isn't BIM implemented? Well, because the demand isn't there from clients and owners. If people don't want it, well, if they're not asking us first, we're not going to do it. So that's why we decided we're going to break that vicious cycle. But we have to see advantages, otherwise we're not going to do it. What does industry say? They're saying training costs is high. And they're saying, I can't see what the advantages of doing this would be. If you think that there's a major cost but you can't see what the benefits are, and nobody's telling you to do it, why would you do it? But there is a positive side to all of this. More and more professionals are using Revit. Purists will say, oh, Revit isn't BIM. Well, you know, contractors and specialized contractors are already engaged. You know, I went with Luc Martin to the Quebec Contractors Corporation, and it turns out that they're asking for training. They want people to be trained. Integrated service offerings are starting to happen here in Quebec. They're starting to take off. People are starting to have the skills, and some people are offering this. And educational institutions are starting to offer specialized training. We see it at ETS, at Cégep de Vieux-Montréal, and Limoilou Cégep. And several clients and owners have projects. For example, the airports. We'll be hearing from them. What are the critical success factors? This is something else that came through. It's essential to integrate clients and suppliers. If the clients aren't interested in this, it's not going to work. You have to be sure that the key players want to change the way they do things. Because we're not talking about technology problems. We're talking about human problems. That's where the obstacles to deployment lie. But we have to want to work upstream more. You know, you can't wait until your digging is started. People want to start digging right away, but no. You have to take some time to do the planning. You have to be sure that people can undertake change. We're talking about ourselves, but also whatever contractors and professionals we hire. We have to be sure that they have the right knowledge and competencies and skills. We have to create a collaborative environment because whatever kind of contract you have, BIM applies. You have to support professionals and contractors. Now, you're going to see all of this in the presentation. Now, there's one thing I didn't say, and that's progressive and gradual deployment based on the level of maturity of the industry. Well, that's actually primary. And you'll see our roadmap. And this is what industry said. Don't do what some countries did, where they said, tomorrow morning you have to have BIM, you have to go from 3D to 7D, and, you know, and everybody is like collapsing. No, industry says we're willing to do this, but it has to be gradual. So I talked to you about this roadmap. We have a dedicated service for this, and I'm doing a little bit of self-promotion here. I've been looking for a director for my BIM integrated design section here. So if you're interested, please apply. So we want to have development and support. So we have to have a cell to support people. Guy Tremblay is responsible for that. Steve is here, rather. And we have a structured process which is integrated into projects. We have contractual clauses and a BIM agreement. We have a BIM management plan. We have a tender process including specific assessment criteria, including collaboration. And you'll say, well, how do you measure collaboration? But if I say, is this guy a good collaborator, you could say yes or no, and it'll be pretty clear. So even if it's somewhat vague, you can assess it. Then we have BIM expert mandates in our projects. What are some of the deployment issues? I'm probably going to go about 2 minutes over. Am I allowed? Okay, good. Well, your stress curve is shifted. You know, if you don't have time for your integrated design in BIM, you're not going to have time to do proper planning. And you're starting by digging a hole, and it's not going to work. It doesn't mean the project's going to take longer because you spend longer planning. It just means that you have to prepare and do the right thing and only do it once. You have to have a homogeneous maturity level in the industry, whereas right now it's quite variable. I don't want to advertise for Pomerleau, but there are people who are involved at all different levels. There are some people who are, let's say, from the Corporation des Mécaniciens en Tuyauterie. There are 5 people working on the plumbing, and it's not the same level, obviously. So you want to be able to have a call for tenders applying to the whole industry. If I was in the private sector, you wouldn't hear about me. We'd just say, okay, we're going for BIM and we'll choose our people, but we have to call for public tenders. So that's a constraint. So I have to get the construction industry on board in Quebec. We need a secure technology environment. There's a learning curve. How long is it going to take? Managing change takes a long time. Firms are different sizes. We have to integrate new practices in project management. That's also a challenge. And what about the democratization of BIM? It's fine to talk about it to each other, but if they're easy tools so that clients who are not familiar with this can actually interact with the teams, it would be good. We're also talking about open BIM, integration of specialized contractors. That's a little more complicated, depending on the different sectors. And we need a culture of collaboration and mutual trust. So we've got professionals, and sometimes it's not so simple. The tools may not be mastered. The maturity levels are different. So a professional is not going to say, great, everything is in my kit is great. You can go take everything that's in the mock-up. No, because he's worried. Not because he's a scaredy cat, but because he's not really comfortable with the tools. And he says, are we going to have to send this out for tender? So these are human issues much more than technological issues, as I've already said. What about BIM-PCI? That's at every single stage, as I said, but it doesn't matter what kind of management mode you're using. If it's turnkey, or if there's different separations in the contract, different divisions. When there are a lot, the communications flow is difficult when you have a lot of firewalls in your contract. So there are fewer advantages. So we're going to cover all different modes. We tend to just go into everything, including where we're less comfortable. We're going to have BIM and that integrated design process in everything. In some cases, we'll have fewer results. In other cases, we'll have more because our project structures will be less compartmentalized. They'll be less in these contract silos. But we'll still be using it. So in the short term, what does all of this look like for us? Well, we'll be implementing this tech environment. We've done it. I'd say that since September of 2016, we require BIM 3D for some of our projects. Not all of them, because if we did it for all of them, we'd be drowned, and that won't work. So that's the decision we made in collaboration with the industry. We will use BIM. We're going to require a professional document to start the call for tenders for professionals, we'll say, with BIM. But in all major projects, integrated design is required. That's not an option. It's no longer, do you feel like doing this? It's, you will do this. That's the short term. And what about over 5 years? 2018, programming needs with BIM. 2019, BIM 60, sustainable development. 2020, BIM 4D, managing schedules and timelines. BIM 5D, cost management. And 2021, BIM 7D, operations. So it's progressive deployment adapted to the industry's maturity levels. To know how the maturity is changing, you have to be grounded. We have to be in touch with you guys to be able to adjust. So in our tender documents, we include various documents, application guides. We show you for SQI and for integrated design and BIM, this is it. It's all described here. That's the recipe. If there are any other recipes anywhere else, it doesn't matter. Our recipe is this one. But we're open to developments. If things don't work, we use this recipe. But if anything in it doesn't work, we'll change it. So, expertise development. Right now we have training for collaborative performance, and any staff involved in the project is BIM trained in collaboration with the Limoilou and Vieux-Montréal CEGEPs. There's modules 1 and 2 of PE BIM. In terms of changes in models and mock-ups, we consulted the industry, and the change in mock-ups has been done together. So there's a consensus on the use of mock-ups based on authorized use basis. We'll say obligation for 3D, but with authorized use as described in the tender document. So professionals accepted this on the basis of authorized uses. Also, we agreed that there would be 2 mock-ups, 2 models. On the bottom, you see the timeline. For calls for tender, you have the authorized use and the operations. So it's very small. I'm sure you can't read it. But it's a document that we include in the tender document, which shows the development for the model. So when you see something that looks like this in your documents, in your tender documents, that's what it's going to look like. Now, another one of our orientations that we came up with in exchange with the industry is the concept of open BIM. To maintain flexibility, it's essential. We don't have to determine the use of one particular software by one company. We said, no, we're just going to have open BIM. We want to be sure that we can monitor certain information and we can limit things, for example, for intellectual property reasons. So we chose open BIM for us. So this is my last slide. Whew! Can relax soon. Progressive implementation of BIM starting in September 2016. It's happening. This is corporate deployment. It's not something that we're doing at random. We've done it in consultation with the industry. It's corporate deployment, complete use from 3D to 7D for 2021. In 2021, according to the current plan, we will have a professional call for tenders, which will be 3D to 7D. We're telling you in advance what it's going to be so the industry can get prepared. This is in partnership with the industry. And we will adjust based on maturity levels. If we realize that we're the only ones who are up ahead and we're looking at ourselves in the mirror and there's nobody behind us, well, we'll have to slow down. But if people are developing faster, then we'll move more quickly. So the advantages are for the industry, for the government, and for Quebec's economy. It's in our best interest to get ourselves up to the same levels as other countries. So we hope to catch up to Hydro-Quebec. Thank you.